Hello friends, let's take up physiology behind one of a very interesting special sense called hearing. Now when it comes to hearing, doctors, you got to know something about the basic physics of sound, alright, so that certain keywords will make more sense and avoid confusions. What is a sound? Now I just clap my hand and I create a vibration. Now this vibration is an energy, and this energy gets spread across the medium around me, which is nothing but air. The energy that gets generated out of the movement gets into the air molecules, makes the air molecules to get collided with each other, they get compressed and then they get rarefacted. Like a ripple in a pond or river or something, when you drop a stone, that energy keeps the molecule to get compressed and rarefacted, that's going to create a sine wave. Now this wave, this sine wave of continuous compression and rarefaction of the medium is what is called as a sound. That medium can be anything. It can be air, it can be any elastic media, it can be water, possible. So if the energy could able to travel in a sine wave, making the molecules of the medium to go for compression and decompression, also called as rarefaction, we call this as a sound. Alright people. Now please remember, it is an energy generated and dissipated by vibrations of sound producing structures, any sound producing structures, which creates sine wave, alright, of compression and rarefaction is called as sound. In this sound sine wave, you have to be familiar with certain basic principles and certain basic variables, alright doctors. Now first thing first, from the beginning of a wave to the end of a wave, from the beginning of a wave it ends and it comes to a complete one full cycle. To be clear, it must be forming a 360-degree turn, doctors. It must be forming a 360-degree turn, alright. So it starts here, it goes to 180 degree and another 180 degree here. So it forms one wave, alright. The distance between two alternative crests or two alternative troughs is what is called as wavelength, The distance between two alternative crests or troughs. When it comes to amplitude, you have to be little bit cautious here because many references confuses this word amplitude. Some textbooks, some physicists calculate amplitude as a peak of one half of the sine wave. Some textbooks references calculates amplitude as peak of the other half of sine wave, the positive deflection or negative deflection. But in general, when it comes to sound, what we are going to measure is something called as peak to peak amplitude. So that includes one half plus other half. Now this is called as peak to peak amplitude, doctors, alright. So I hope you get the point of wavelength. It indicates the distance between two consecutive peaks or two consecutive troughs in a sine wave. Amplitude is nothing but the peak to peak distance. From the baseline, the upward deflection goes to what extent, from the baseline downward deflection goes to what extent, that is called as peak to peak amplitude. Now you are clear with wavelength, you are clear with amplitude. Now the number of waves per each second or each unit time is what is called as frequency. Number of waves per each unit time or second is called as frequency, which is measured in hertz, doctors. So please remember, frequency is nothing but number of waves per second, which is recorded in hertz, which is measured in hertz, which is colloquially called as pitch. You would have heard this: high pitch sound, low pitch sound, nothing. High frequency, low frequency, that's all. Instead of calling it in a technical terminology, they found a substitute word that is more colloquial, and that is what is called as pitch. Again, when it comes to pitch, there are hell lot of references that over confuse and over complicate the word pitch. They terribly try to find a difference between frequency and pitch, but they fail. In reality, there is no difference, right? So by the standards of sound engineering, by the standards of physics, frequency is nothing but pitch. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't get distracted by some false references or inaccurate references. The second one, amplitude. Amplitude translates to loudness of sound. More the amplitude, more louder the sound is. When it comes to pitch, doctors, you would have experienced this. In your music system, there is something called as there will be a knob for bass, there will be a knob for treble, right? So bass indicates a very low frequency sound and treble indicates very high frequency sound. What does that tells you? If the frequency is very low, the sound is less clear. You could able to hear some air kind of noises. It's not going to be very clear, it's not going to be very legible, it's not going to be very sharp. Whereas high frequency sound, high pitch sounds are going to be very sharp, clear, crystal. So pitch or frequency indicates, or it translates to sharpness of sound. A vague, dull, buzzing sound, low frequency. Clear, crisp, sharp, striking sound, high frequency. Amplitude gets translated to loudness. More the amplitude of the wave, more louder the sound is. The third one is something called a sound pressure level, which is exactly what is getting measured in decibels. What is sound pressure level, doctors? Now, consider I am creating a sound by using my right middle finger and right thumb. I am just making a feeble sound. It's not going to be very high in amplitude. But instead, if I go for a strong sound, now this sound is quite high in amplitude, quite high in sound pressure level as well. What is this difference? For example, I have my mic right on my shirt, it's close to my chest. Now imagine I make a sound here. Now this sound will be caught in my mic because the energy that I am creating is going to be transmitted from my finger all the way in the air medium to the mic. But if I make the same kind of sound a little bit far away, this might not be easily caught by my mic because from this point the energy is decent enough to enter the mic. From a far point the energy is not good enough to reach the mic, the energy gets lost in the travel. Now loudness is different, energy is different. What is loudness? Say for example, the amplitude is same, which means the loudness is same. A person standing close to a microphone, close to a speaker, we'll put it that way. There is a concert going on, there is a party going on. Someone stands very close to the speaker, someone stands very far away from the speaker. Alright, a huge speaker, imagine that way. Now both these two people will able to hear the sound in a same loudness, but the pressure that experienced by a person standing close to the speaker is quite high and the person standing far away from the speaker is quite less because there will be a drop in pressure by the time the wave travels in the air medium.